Hi there! Well, today's video is going to be all about the Tarte Tartelette palette. This features 12 all matte eyeshadows that are in colors that are new to the Tarte range. I purchased mine through Sephora online. It was $44, and when I originally bought this, it was exclusive to VIB and Rouge members, but now it's my understanding this has been opened up for everyone. It did sell out the first time around, and I have a strong feeling that this is going to sell out again, but there's no pressure, there's no rush. I do believe this is going to be a permanent part of the Tarte range, but if it's something that you're interested in having sooner rather than later, you might want to go ahead and take a look before it does sell out again. So I've already brought you a Flash Beauty video for this. If you're not familiar with my Flash Beauty videos, they are just swatches, and I try to bring you all of those in 1 minute or less. So I'll link to that video down below if you're interested in just seeing what the shadows look like. But if you'd like to hear a little bit more about my thoughts on the palette, then let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I noticed about this palette when I purchased it is that it's got a really nice case. It's very nicely weighted. It's not super heavy, but it's also not flimsy by any means. It is very thin, so it still would sit very flat in your cosmetic bag, or if you need to travel, this would be a great size to travel with. On the inside, it has a very large mirror. I'm going to try not to flash you with the mirror so I don't blind you here, but as you can see, the mirror is the entire lid of the palette, so it's a very generous size. Again, great for travel because everything that you need is right here. You've got your shadows, you've got your mirror. You could just prop this up on any flat surface and use this to do your makeup with, so I really like that about it. On the inside here, I'm going to go ahead and flip this around. Hopefully you can see there is a great range of shades here. There are 12 shadows, as I mentioned before. You've got really nice selection of highlighter shades, mid-tone shades, and then here on the end, actually I've got my finger stuck in one of these. Here on the end, you've got some great shadows that you can use as an outer V color to add a little bit of definition. I also like to use them as liner colors. All of the colors here have great pigmentation. They're exactly what you would expect from Tarte eyeshadows. I did notice when I was swatching some of these initially, they did feel a little bit dry on my fingertips, but that dryness did not have any impact on the pigmentation of these shadows whatsoever. So they're not going to feel, not all of them are going to feel extremely buttery and creamy, but you are going to get that color payoff in your lid. So don't let that be a concern to you. They are certainly not chalky in any way. I've been really happy with the way these shadows go onto my lid. I think they all blend very well together. I think they're really easy to work with. And what I've been very surprised about, even with these darker shades here on the end, let me hold this over this way. Even with the darker shades here on the end, there is virtually no fallout. Maybe just a tiny bit, but that's been very surprising to me. Even if there were fallout, I wouldn't consider that a strike against the palette. I think it's just something that happens with the darker shades. But I was very pleasantly surprised that that really does not happen with this palette. One shade that I did find a little bit more powdery than the others is this color down here in the corner, Supermom. I've been using this as my brow bone highlight and a little bit of inner corner highlight. That one does have a little bit of a powdery texture to it, but everything else is pretty smooth. The nice thing about this palette also that I found is that you really can't go wrong with any of the combinations. When I was starting to sit down and think about the look that I wanted to create with this palette, I was really thinking to myself, there's really no way to go wrong with this. I'm sorry the lid doesn't open up all the way here, so it's a little bit awkward for me to hold this open. But you really just can't go wrong with any of these color combinations. They all work so well together. You could almost just choose blindly. So I just started playing around a little bit. I've done several different color combinations, but I really like that there's so many choices of mid-tone shades for your lid. You've got several choices here for your crease colors or eyeliner colors. You've got some great transition and highlight colors. It's just great all-in-one palette. I love it when you get a large palette like this where I feel like I do what I say, grab and go. You can grab this and not have to include any other colors with it. You wouldn't need to add a liner color. You can just not take an eyeliner altogether and use a shadow, which is what I often do with my looks. You wouldn't need separate highlighter colors. Everything you need is right here. You can create a really subtle daytime look, or you can go ahead and use some of the darker colors to add a little bit more definition definition and punch up that look for nighttime. I think if you're someone that travels for work, you're going to get a really nice daytime professional look. And then if you want to add a little bit of drama at nighttime, you can certainly go back and just add a little bit of one of these darker colors to do that. And that's another great thing about this palette, of course, because it is matte. You're not having to worry about any shimmer or glitter or anything like that. This is going to be a very sophisticated, appropriate look, especially if you're wanting something for an office look. You could certainly just take a couple of these shadows and create a really great everyday look. If I were doing that, I would probably just choose Power Player or Natural Beauty and then maybe add one of these highlight shades and call it a day. I would just take one of those, blend it over my lid and up into my crease, add a little brow bone highlight, and that would be it. And then, as I mentioned before, if you want to add a little bit more drama at nighttime, you could just come back in, choose one of your darker shades here, and just add a little bit of definition and be done. It's just really fantastic. I did choose a lot more colors today. I really just wanted to see how many I could use in the look and really get a good sampling of everything. But you certainly wouldn't need to do that to create a really beautiful everyday look. Now, I also did want to mention that a lot of times when you swatch eyeshadow colors, sometimes what you're seeing in the palette is not what you get on your skin. But I think that all of these shadows are pretty true to the color that you see in the pan. I was thinking that some of these that I might use for lid colors might swatch a little bit differently, but I do feel like they're pretty true. And as I mentioned before, especially some of these darker shades here on the end, they did feel a little bit dry on my fingers and even now when I swatch them, but that does not translate. As you can see, the pigmentation here is excellent. Let me go ahead and swatch a couple of these others, but do look for that Flash Beauty video down below so that way you can really get a good idea. So there's all 3 of those shades, and I just barely rubbed my finger and put these on. The nice thing about the mid-tone colors is they have great pigmentation as well. It's not too light, not too dark. It's exactly what you would want from a mid-tone color. And the same with the lighter highlight shades. They're not too bright, they're not chalky, they're just exactly what you would want. I've been just so pleased that every color in this palette in its own range is exactly what I would want. I want something in the dark area for a liner or outer V color that's going to have a lot of color punch, but then I want my lid colors to just sort of be a nice straightforward sort of a mid-tone medium color, and that's exactly what I've got from this palette. When I first got this palette, one of the things that really stood out to me is that a lot of the colors weren't similar to anything else that I had in my collection, but when I started thinking a little bit more about it, it really did feel like that some of the colors were a little bit reminiscent of the Urban Decay Naked 2 and 3 palette, but in a matte formulation. So I really like that. Especially this middle row here, that reminded me a lot of the Naked 3 palette, but a lot of those rosy shades had a little bit of shimmer that I wasn't really pleased with. And then one of my favorite colors from the Naked 2 palette was the color Tease, and this color Power Player down here kind of reminded me of that. So I just felt like this was kind of what I wanted from Naked 2 and 3. Since I do prefer matte shadows, it was kind of the colors that I wanted from that palette, but in a formulation that I really love. And just something I do want to point out is I feel like you really can just create so many combinations with this palette. It just seems like you can choose just about whatever you want and they're all going to work well together. Sometimes when you get a large palette like this with this many shadows, there are 12, you really have a couple of colors that just don't seem to go with anything else. They're sort of like a one bright color they'll include that just seem like maybe a good accent color, but not something that you would normally choose to work into your look. And this really is one of those palettes that you can use everything. There isn't a color in here that I wouldn't feel comfortable using. So just to sum everything up here, I do give the Tartelette palette a Le Beauty Bag Bravo. It's exactly what I wanted and what I expected of this palette. There's been no disappointments. I love the combinations that I can create with this. I love the shades that they included. I love the formulas. I love the blendability of it. I do think you're getting a good value. There's 12 shadows here for $44, and they will certainly last me a long time. And I just love that it's just something that I feel like I can't go wrong with because of the matte formulation, because of the colors they've included and how flattering they are and how they all work together. It's just a great balanced palette. It's a great all-in-one palette if you need to travel, if you need a no fuss, no worries look for every single day. This is going to be a great palette for you. I'm very, very happy with it. So I hope that this review was helpful to you. I thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you very soon. Bye-bye.